Well, good evening, folks. Here we are back with Activate Worcester again. A little different format tonight. Our usual prime commentator is not with us tonight. Compliments of the first snow in Worcester. And if any of you have enjoyed that, you'll know that downtown is quite a difficult place to transverse. So without further ado, I'll hand the program over to Chris Pinto. Chris in his newly decorated T-shirt. We've pressed him into service tonight, so we're a little less formal. So take it away, Chris.
Okay, tonight we, our show is usually about our guests, and tonight is no exception. We have a guy here who, old-time friend that many of our friends know, is Jack Durkin from the Worcester Republican City Committee. He equates this gentleman at the same sort of level in history as the Founding Fathers. I know that our guest, Mike Gussino, finds that a little amusing. But I think as we get into the story of his history and getting involved in politics, you'll find that he has done a lot for people. When I was just a little young pup running around in the woods with a shotgun, chasing bird in the woods and missing a lot of them, this guy was a big activist for our rights here in Massachusetts. So, Mike, maybe you can tell us how you got involved in the firearms issue, and I think it's a very interesting story.
Thanks for inviting me, first of all. I got involved back in the 70s, actually, when I started a group called the Blackstone Valley Junior Sportsmen down in the valley where I live. Kids were mostly from what we called in our day broken homes. And I tried to give them an outlet. They had an interest in fishing or shooting, so we created a club and worked out of the Uxbridge Rod and Gun Club. That went along pretty good for a while. I was working as a civil engineer with a company in Auburn, and there was a bill filed by a senator who was from Oxford. His name was Jim Kelly. And it was not a good bill for us. And I went on the WTAG radio and I blasted the heck out of him for it. And lo and behold, the next day I had my walking papers. And I thought that if that's what politics is all about, I needed to get involved in it kind of quick. I had 21 men working for me on a job working on the Mass Turnpike, and I got fired in less than 12 hours, all because I went after some person who was violating my rights. So I got involved in politics. And in 1974, there was a group of people, mostly in the eastern part of Massachusetts, putting together an organization that they wanted to have full-time representation at the legislature on legislation that's being filed, get involved in political campaigns, that kind of thing. It was called the Joint Legislative Sportsmen's Committee. Within about a year, it evolved into what was later known as Gun Owners Action League. And the main thrust of what it was all about was the sheriff of Middlesex County, Mr. Jack Buckley. Sheriff Buckley decided he was going to put a bill through that would ban all handguns. And it went on as a referendum question, question 5. We defeated that. I don't know what the devil would have happened in this day and age, considering what's just happened to our great country. But in those days, we won 70-30. Defeated the ban, and as luck would have it, I guess, there was legislation filed immediately to do the same thing. So the organization had a cause, and I stayed there. That was in 1976. That was on the ballot. In January of 77, we just started moving forward. By the summer of 77, I became the executive director of that organization and its chief lobbyist, and spent 30 years building a fine organization of a lot of people, thousands of people, and defeating dozens of anti-gun legislation that had been filed here in Massachusetts. Now, we didn't focus any of our attention nationally to speak of. It was basically a statewide organization. And I began with one other person that was working with me, Nancy Fearing. We began to build the organization into an umbrella for a number of things. For instance, because we got involved in campaigns now and political activity, we needed a PAC. Everybody else had one. And although we didn't have a lot of money, we used the PAC to generate letters for candidates that were pro-gun into their district. We did phone banking. We did all the kinds of things that you do in a campaign, but we did it separate from the individuals that we were trying to help. We did get involved in some campaigns to try to oust people, but mostly it was a positive thing. We tried to find people who respected our rights, respected our responsibilities, respected us as Americans, and we supported them. It seemed to work. We seemed to do fairly well in the legislature, even with the likes of Mike Dukakis, if you can remember him, and the 14 years he spent in there. We managed to get a number of very pro-gun pieces of legislation through, even under him. And I credit that a little bit to the Senate President Bulger, who a lot of folks don't particularly care for, but he helped us tremendously. He was a very fiscal conservative, and he did us a lot of favors. And of course, the Speaker of the House at the time, Tom McGee, was a Marine, and you didn't want to talk to him about banning guns. That wasn't a good idea. So the lobbying took a major portion of what I was doing, but I had interest in other things. We needed to develop more education and training opportunities for the public. We found during the Question 5 campaign that most people didn't realize all of the paperwork you had to go through to legally own a gun in Massachusetts, that we had had registration since 1906. We'd had licensing of some form since that time. And the rest of the country was laughing at us for all of that. You hear a lot of talk about New York, but we had trumped them in the case of licensing. So we began to run programs where legislators were. I actually ran firearms safety programs in the State House. We would invite legislators and their staff to come down, and we ran training downstairs in the basement of the State House. I also ran firearms safety days, where we brought in the various aspects of what we did, whether it's hunting or target shooting or collecting or whatever the case may be, any legitimate use of firearms. And we even cooked for them. We'd have game meat prepared. A very quick, interesting story. One of the folks that was the head of the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs came to one of those events and was eating something in a tray and commented how he liked that very much. And when he got through, I said to him, "Well, that's mourning dove." Mourning dove? Wow, that's very good. You shoot them here? No, those are imported from Rhode Island. We couldn't hunt them in Massachusetts. But an enjoyable thing and a good way to kind of get their attention. Some of the senators who felt that we should have more restrictions, I would give them little items to hold. For instance, I gave them a Brown Bess musket ball.
Yeah.
Well, one of the senators, Biff McLean from down in Bristol County, he said to me, "This is a real nice memento." He says, I'll hang on to it. I said, "Senator, excuse me for a minute. Do you have a license to carry an FID card?" "Oh, no, I don't have any of that." I said, "Well, under the law, you could go to jail for 1 to 5 years. You're in possession of a component part of ammunition, and under the law, you need to be licensed."
A round piece of lead.
A round piece of lead. Now, if you banged it out square and made one portion of dice, you were fine. But in that configuration, nope, can't be done. So I got his attention, and I got him more actively involved in our cause by taking a harder look at the legislation that we were opposing and helping us with legislation that would limit the restrictions on good people.
Yeah, isn't it Massachusetts and New York are the only two states in the Union that you require a license to carry a spice? Pepper spray.
Oh, I see.
A spice.
Yep.
Every other state in the Union, you don't need a license to carry pepper spray, which is a strictly defensive weapon. Mm-hmm. It's spray them in the eyes and run. It's not meant to hurt anyone. But in Massachusetts and New York, you need a license for spices.
Can accomplish a lot of that with a can of hairspray.
And it's true, which doesn't require a license.
So in any case, as time went on, we got a governor that we worked with quite well, Bill Weld. And when Weld came in, he had a number of ideas for reducing crime in Massachusetts, one of which is he created a statewide crime watch commission and tapped me to be on it. Within a year and a half, I was the chairman of that commission, and I served there for 13 years. We represented just about every badge in the state, from state police to, we had ATF, we had about everybody on there, Secret Service, Special Service, Chiefs of Police, everybody was represented. We developed a number of programs which the commission got national recognition from 2 separate presidents acknowledging the programs that we developed and replicating those programs around the country. Transit Watch, Park Watch, Crime Buses, which was a union of truck drivers that drive around the neighborhood like garbage truck drivers or something like that. They know what the neighborhood's supposed to look like. They know when somebody's not around. They know when something looks a little odd. So we developed a system where they could call a dispatcher. The dispatcher immediately calls the police. Boom, you got somebody there. And within 2 weeks of announcing the program, we had a cable company in the neighborhood. Saw a van with out-of-state plates, a few things going out of the house, dropped a dime, police came, broke up a heck of a ring. It was in the Brockton area. So it works. It works. I spent a good deal of my time trying to get more people to help themselves in reducing crime rather than having the government just throw money at it all the time.
So are these programs still in force?
No.
How come?
No, the Crime Watch Commission pretty much faded away just after I retired in 2004. In 2005, they no longer wanted to fund the program. It was only $100,000. We had 1 staffer. And basically the money was used to make up the signs, the Neighborhood Crime Watch signs and pamphlets that would be given out at public forums that we were sponsoring. All went by the boards. It's sad because you saw more people now just getting involved in watching the money flowing back and forth instead of really doing something positive. And to get people involved in their community took a little more pride in what was going on. So it was a good program. And because I represented the gun owners in the state, it gave me an opportunity to work with people who heretofore had been polarized with us, not because we had done anything wrong, but simply because of the demographics and the media and a bunch of other stuff that just drove us in opposite directions. So we ironed a lot of that out. I also got a chance to develop more programs for young people. We created a foundation. I incorporated the Gold Foundation back in 1990. And that was designed to promote through public education and training more safety with people with guns. We felt that the more individuals who were properly trained, the better off we were all going to be. And worked it from the bottom up with juniors. And speaking of juniors, in 1988, I also incorporated the Massachusetts Junior Conservation Camp. We created a corporation, Massachusetts Sportsmen's Junior Conservation Camp, and then ran this camp program out of it for 13 to 17-year-olds to teach them about the outdoors. All aspects, fishing, camping, shooting, archery, boating, whatever the case may be, any of the things that we all do outside. That program's running today. I'm still the treasurer of the corporation, and it's been highly successful. We only take 120 kids a year, so it's sought after. We fill up very quickly within the first 2 months of the year. I run the program on a Boy Scout property out in Chesterfield, Massachusetts, and for 2 weeks in August. Excellent program, excellent results, and a lot of very influential people who've attended. Bill Weld came out a number of times and participated with us. Bob Duran, who was a senator and head of the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, he went as a youngster and sent his kids later on in life. Very good program. Anybody interested in that kind of a thing, they usually work it through the rod and gun clubs. Clubs will sponsor a young person or a garden club. Some legislators did. Senator Mary Padula years ago from up in the Fitchburg area, she used to sponsor a young person to that. So I guess what I'm saying is I had a golden opportunity in the 30 years that I was the executive director at Goal in developing a number of public programs that helped our cause all across the board, from young people to adults.
Well, and the focus is on education, right?
Absolutely.
there's a great deal of ignorance, at least by my observation, about Second Amendment kinds of issues, as well as outdoor type of recreation. People don't understand how much the state spends on it and what's available. So it seems like you hit all the way across on that.
There's
with
about,
the programs.
right now, I think there's about 200 plus or minus rod and gun clubs in the state. Represents maybe about 40,000 acres of land. And one of the things that I did while I was at Goal is I developed a program in concert with some people from the Department of Environmental Protection, a program called the Lead Shot Initiative, to protect clubs from closure for a bunch of alleged environmental concerns. The program worked so well that the EPA altered all its regulations regarding lead in the environment. Lead deposits in a rifle range or a shotgun range are really not an issue environmentally if they're treated. And in many cases, they can be recovered and recycled. The state of California, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of recovery from major skeet and trap ranges. Take it back up, use it over again. It's as simple as that. It's not hazardous if it's dealt with. And our program was spoken about at the national symposium that EPA had back in the 90s. And in fact, they even gave me an award. And it was kind of ironic because it's just not normal that you would be working with some of these agencies that you would think the Sierra Club or some of these other far left organizations are working with. But we had an issue, we had a problem, we solved the problem. We don't want the government to solve it. I think if everybody kind of took that as a lesson, we might be a lot better off in this country. The government isn't the answer to things, they're the problem. And in this case, we had an issue, we fixed the issue, and then we told them what they needed to do about it. And so I think out of the highlights of my career at that organization, that's one of the bigger ones.
Well, it just proves if people keep an open mind, they can work together in very interesting ways at the end of the day.
Well, it would have been sad if the state would have been closing these clubs, because now you would have all this acreage that would be treated as hazardous waste.
Yeah.
Now you got to do something with taxpayer dollars. Why would you want to do that? We fixed the problem. Actually, you can fix it with a couple of bags of lime. So it's really not a big deal. And it was great that we got the national administration at the national level to understand what we were trying to do. And now it's spread all around the country. This best management practice theme with our property is a much better approach than closure and the way that it's normally treated. So I liked those things. I liked what I did. I enjoyed my 30 years. I believe that we accomplished a great deal. We created enough entities out there to help the gun owner and sportsman, no matter what they did, from collecting to shooting. We got very active with young people in training and competitions, and we've seen a lot of successes there too. So I think it was a good run.
So, Mike, I listened intently to everything you're saying because, we go back to question 5, and I was just a young kid running around. I remember vaguely one of my high school buddies that I hunted with, his dad mentioning this bill, trying to get rid of handguns. And then you talk about the lead program. And I think what really comes through to me is you have this spirit of cooperation when you got active in this lead program, because I've heard a story of a shooting club down the Cape who, when the government came to them and tried to work with them for a lead remediation program, they didn't take a positive cooperative attitude. And now that club is forced to use steel shot only. Mm-hmm. And if you're a trapper, skeet shooter, and you know anything about steel shot, you know that you can't use your old classic Browning Auto 5s because they won't take steel shot. And the steel shot's very expensive. Mm-hmm. And there are some non-lead shots that they make as well. But all these are very expensive solutions to a problem that could have been solved with cooperation. And
we found a number of alternatives. Also, the the wads that are used in the shot shells. We
Yes.
found that you could recover those, and we convinced the industry to do something with it, to recycle that stuff, to reuse that product. You don't want to have waste. We tend to bury everything. There's no need to do that. We can reuse a lot of the products that we use now, and that's a better environmental approach, in my opinion. And I was very happy to see not only EPA, but our DEP here in Massachusetts cooperate so strongly with us with that program.
Yeah. And I'm intrigued by this whole question 5. And maybe, I'm asking you to go outside your comfort zone and step inside the head of these liberals, this Senator Kelly and Sheriff Buckley. What was their intent? Why did they feel that banning handguns for private citizen ownership in Massachusetts was a good idea?
Buckley was a sheriff of Middlesex County, and he felt that guns were the issue. Guns were the problem. It's guns that made crime. It's kind of like flies causing garbage. It just doesn't make any sense, what he said. He didn't carry a gun. Another quick story, we did a debate one night on a radio show in Boston with Harvey Nelson. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I remember him, yeah.
And after the show was over, well, actually it was a 2-hour segment, and halfway between, a guy came in and said, "Tell your guests to be careful when they leave the building tonight because the cleaning lady got robbed at knife point downstairs." Well, I wasn't all that concerned, but I had a couple of friends with me, and
Smith and Wesson.
Smith and Wesson, and Buckley didn't. So we get downstairs. I had another person with me too. We got downstairs and we started out the door, and he's tagging right along with me. And I said, "Hey, you got a problem? Something wrong?" Well, his truck was parked around the other side of the building. I said, "I'll walk you over to your truck if you feel a little better, Sheriff." I said, "I don't want to know." So I walk around the building. Sure enough, there's a truck backed out behind his vehicle. Now, he's got a state vehicle. 2 guys sitting in a pickup truck. I let him know that they probably shouldn't be in that area. He got in his car and he left. And I thought to myself after, well, what a hypocrite this guy is. I had a gun and I could protect him. He didn't.
But he wanted to take your gun away.
Wanted to ban my gun.
So if that was the issue, how would he ever explain, say, the city of Chicago, Illinois right now, where you're not allowed to own a handgun, and I think it's the murder capital of the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
I think one weekend, I forget what weekend was it, Halloween weekend last year, there was 40 shootings and 14 deaths in a city that bans handgun ownership.
Well, I guess to sum up a little bit about myself, I enjoyed my 30 years. I think I accomplished a lot. I got to meet an awful lot of people. I shook hands with a lot of very important people nationally. I got to sit with Ronald Reagan on several occasions, and I found him to be an extraordinary individual. In fact, the second time he talked to me, he remembered my name. And he either had to have an awful lot of good people around him, or he had a hell of a memory. And we chatted. I brought Dapper O'Neill up to meet him up in New Hampshire when he was running for president. It was those kind of things that are good memories for me. I even got a commendation letter from Bill Clinton for some of the stuff that we did with the Crime Watch Commission. So it was more the work we were doing than it was us individually. And I was proud to do all that stuff. We passed 30 pieces of good legislation throughout my time as head of the organization. The creation of the Lead Shot Initiative I thought was just astronomical, the way we saved the clubs. One of the main bills that we got through during my tenure was a bill to protect the rod and gun clubs from so-called noise pollution. There's all kinds of theories out there by the people who want to take away your right to be an independent individual, and one of them was that the noise was bothering everybody. One woman came in at a hearing and said that the noise was traumatizing her dog. The noise from shooting. Now the shooting was 2.5 miles away. The lawnmower next door didn't seem to traumatize the dog, nor the trucks going down by the front of the house. That didn't seem to bother the dog any. It's just, you want to say it's imbecilic in some respect, but I guess people got a right to their opinion. It's just that we tried to resolve the issues with facts and not all that hype. And I take a lot of pride in doing that. So that, in addition to the creation of the foundation and the junior conservation camp, I think it was a good run.
And I would have to 100% agree. I think one of the first times I saw you, I hadn't been introduced to you. You were at a goal banquet, and my good friend Jack Durkin was retiring from being the president of the goal organization for 16 and a half years, I believe it was.
He there the longest.
And you were presenting him with a beautiful, I believe it was a pump shotgun
Shotgun.
that was
What
camouflaged.
he wanted.
That was what he wanted?
Yep, that's what he wanted.
Yep. And I guess he likes eating duck.
Yep.
Something.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure I'm a big enjoyer of duck. But usually the way we wrap up our shows, and I don't know if it's appropriate with this one, and we're going to have you on for another show, is to talk about how people can get involved in this issue that you're so passionate about, that you've dedicated 30 years of your life to, and that Jack Durkin equates you with one of the founding fathers because of your accomplishments. So how can our viewers of this show get involved to help continue your legacy of protecting our gun rights?
Well, I think there's a couple of levels. Certainly the National Rifle Association on the national level is an important organization. They're very strong, they're very active, they have a variety of segments of the organization that a number of the things that I've done here, the foundation, they have their own foundation. They do an awful lot for the community. They do a lot for law enforcement. They are the premier training organization in the country. I also think that people locally need to get involved with their rod and gun clubs. The clubs provide a venue for a number of people to learn the proper way to handle firearms. They have the ranges. They have the instructors. They have the facilities to do all of that. They also open their doors to the public. There are a number of open houses. I know just in this area alone, Auburn and Singletary and a number of the clubs that open their property up for the public to come in to see what they do. When you get involved with a rod and gun club, you then get not only a taste of all of the things that you can do as a gun owner and a sportsman, but any of the things that impact you publicly. You get to work with young people. That's, I think, a very good place for people to put their resources.
In our next show, we're going to talk more about that, working with the young people.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike, so much.
Thanks a lot.
It's an honor to be amongst one of the founding father type guys from our modern day.
Watch out for Jack.